The smoke was still rising when Thomas McKenna rode into what had once been the settlement of Esperanza. It was October 1889, and the Colorado Territory was already feeling winter's bite. Tom pulled his coat tighter as he surveyed the devastation: charred foundations, skeletal fence posts, and the acrid smell of destruction hanging in the mountain air. Tom had been a cavalry scout for 15 years before hanging up his uniform. He'd seen Apache raids and Comanche war parties, but this felt different. This was personal, methodical, and cruel. The McKenna Trading Post, where he'd planned to resupply, was nothing but blackened timber. Old Henrik Morrison's cabin was reduced to a stone chimney, standing like a tombstone against the gray sky. Even the barn had been reduced to smoldering ruins. "Hello," Tom called out, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Anyone there?" Silence answered, broken only by wind through the debris. Tom found Henrik Morrison's body near his front door, still clutching a shotgun. The old Norwegian had put up a fight. But where was his granddaughter Emma? Tom had met them 6 months ago. Henrik, tough as leather with hands like gnarled oak, and Emma, perhaps 14, with auburn hair and intelligent brown eyes that seemed older than her years. As darkness fell, Tom was preparing to make camp when he heard it. A soft whimper, like a wounded animal. The sound came from Henrik's stone fireplace, the only part of the cabin still standing. What Tom had taken for burned blankets was actually a person, a small figure curled up in the cold ashes. "Emma," he whispered, dropping to his knees. She was unconscious, wrapped in charred rags, her face streaked with soot and tears. Her breathing was shallow, and burns marked her hands and arms where she'd tried to fight the fire. "Emma," Tom said softly, touching her shoulder. "It's Tom McKenna. I was here before, remember?" Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and filled with terror. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by fresh grief. "They killed him," she whispered. "They killed Grandpa Henrik." Tom's throat tightened. "I know, sweetheart, but you're alive, and that's what matters. I'm going to take care of you." He examined her in the fading light. Burns on her hands and arms, smoke-damaged lungs, but she was alive. "Can you tell me what happened?" Emma's eyes stared past him. "They came at noon. 5 men, maybe 6. The leader had a black beard and a scar on his cheek. They said Grandpa owed them money, but he didn't owe anybody anything. When he refused to sell our land, they shot him." Tom felt cold rage building. Claimed jumpers, murderers who killed innocent people for land. They burned everything. I hid in the root cellar, but the smoke, I couldn't breathe. I crawled into the fireplace, because the stones protected me from the fire. Tom marveled at her survival instinct. "We need to get you to a doctor. Cedar Falls is 20 miles south." As he lifted her carefully, she looked back at the ruins. "I was so cold, Mr. McKenna. In the ashes, I was so cold I thought I might die." Tom's arms tightened around her protectively. "You'll never be cold again, Emma. I promise you that. Whatever it takes, you'll never be cold again." As they rode toward Cedar Falls, Emma wrapped in his coat and sheltered in his arms, Tom had no idea that those words would become the foundation of a new life for both of them. Dr. Margaret Whitmore was closing her practice when urgent knocking shattered the evening quiet. Through the frosted glass, she saw a tall man holding someone small in his arms. "Dr. Whitmore, I have a girl here who needs help." Margaret opened the door to find a weathered man with kind eyes, carrying a young girl wrapped in a man's coat. The child's face was pale, her breathing shallow, and smoke clung to her hair. "Bring her in quickly." "What happened?" "Emma Morrison. Her homestead was burned out. She's been breathing smoke and has burns on her hands." Margaret began her examination in the lamplight. Emma's pulse was weak but steady, lungs clearer than expected. The burns were painful but not life-threatening. "She's malnourished. How long since she's eaten?" "I found her this morning, hiding in the ashes of her grandfather's fireplace." Margaret's heart clenched at the image. As she cleaned Emma's wounds, the girl began to stir. "Easy, dear. I'm Dr. Whitmore. You're safe now." Emma's eyes found the man who'd brought her. "Mr. McKenna? I'm here, Emma." "Are you really a doctor?" Emma asked Margaret, eyes wide. I studied medicine at Harvard before coming to Colorado. I've never met a lady doctor. Grandpa always said women were too delicate for such work. Margaret smiled. Your grandfather was wrong about that. Women can be just as strong as men, just in different ways. Margaret turned to Tom. She has no family? None. Her grandfather was all she had left. There's an orphanage in Denver, but... No. Tom's voice was firm. I won't see her sent to some institution. Margaret studied him carefully. Then what do you propose? I want to take care of her. I've got money saved, no family of my own. Emma and I could be family, if she'll have me. Emma looked between them with those wise eyes. Why would you do that? Tom knelt beside the examination table. Because everyone deserves a chance at a good life. And because I think your grandfather would want someone to look after you. If I say yes, do I have to call you Papa? Tom's throat tightened. You can call me whatever feels right. Emma nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. Having a family again. Margaret felt tears in her eyes. It wasn't traditional, but it was real. There's one more thing, Tom said. The men who did this need to face justice. Emma's face darkened. You're going after them? I am. But not until you're well. I want to come with you. Absolutely not, both Margaret and Tom said. Emma, Margaret said gently, revenge won't bring your grandfather back. Tom took her bandaged hand. They won't get away with it, I promise. But justice and revenge are different things. Emma looked between them, then nodded. Promise me you'll come back. I can't lose another family. I promise, Emma. I'll come back to you. As night fell over Cedar Falls, Emma drifted off to sleep in a warm bed, surrounded by people who cared. For the first time in days, she wasn't cold. 2 weeks later, Tom stood in Marshall Stone's office, studying wanted posters. Emma was recovering well under Margaret's care, but the scars on her hands would always remind her of that terrible day. The description matches Cyrus Blackwood, Stone said, tapping a poster showing a large man with a black beard and scarred cheek. He's been hitting homesteads across the territory, filing false claims. $500 bounty, dead or alive. Any idea where he might be? Deadwood Gulch, 50 miles northwest. It's a mining town, but also a haven for men with questionable pasts. Stone studied Tom. These men are killers. Going after them alone is suicide. By the time you organize a posse, they'll be gone. This might be our only chance. Stone opened his desk drawer and pulled out a deputy marshal's badge. I can't officially sanction this, but I can deputize you. Tom raised his right hand as Stone swore him in. The weight of the badge felt familiar, but different. This was about justice, not just keeping peace. Stone handed him a double-barreled shotgun. This belonged to my predecessor. Blackwood killed him 2 years ago. Davies always said if something happened to him, he wanted his guns used to finish the job. The ride to Deadwood Gulch took Tom through beautiful but treacherous mountain country. The town was everything Stone had described, a collection of hastily built saloons, gambling halls, and brothels catering to miners and outlaws. Tom entered the Golden Nugget, the largest saloon. The interior was thick with smoke and the smell of unwashed bodies and cheap whiskey. At a corner table, 5 men played poker, but Tom could tell they were more interested in business than gambling. The man facing him was large and bearded, with a scar on his left cheek. Cyrus Blackwood. Mind if I watch the game? Tom asked. Blackwood looked up, sizing him up. You got money to lose. Some, but I'm more interested in work. What kind of work? I heard you might be hiring. Spent 15 years in the cavalry before I got tired of taking orders. Blackwood's eyes narrowed with interest. We might have something coming up. Pay is good, but it's dangerous. You squeamish about blood. Depends on whose blood. I like him, said the man to Blackwood's right, Jay Carver from the wanted posters. We're in the business of acquisition, Blackwood said. Land mostly. Sometimes people need convincing to sell. Tom forced himself to stay calm. When do we start? Tomorrow. There's a homestead 30 miles south. Family named Henderson. They're sitting on valuable land, and they need to be convinced to move on. Tom's blood ran cold. Another innocent family marked for death. What's the plan? Same as always. We make them an offer. If they refuse. Blackwood shrugged. Accidents happen. House fires, mostly. Tom nodded, hating himself for the deception. Sounds like easy money. It is. Meet us at dawn. That night, Tom sat in his hotel room, cleaning his weapons and planning. He had found Blackwood, but now he faced an even greater challenge, stopping them from murdering the Henderson family while capturing 5 dangerous men without backup. Tomorrow would determine whether justice would be served or whether more innocent blood would be spilled on the frontier. Tom didn't sleep. At dawn, he met Blackwood's gang, and they rode toward the Henderson homestead, a modest farm in a peaceful valley, where a family was going about their morning routine, unaware that death was approaching. As they neared the cabin, Tom saw a woman hanging laundry, a man working in the garden, and 2 children playing near the porch. It was a scene of domestic peace that reminded him of the life Emma and her grandfather had built before Blackwood destroyed it. Remember, Blackwood said, we give them one chance to sell. Tom nodded, his hand moving to his shotgun. As they approached the cabin, he made his move. Blackwood, Tom called out, pulling the shotgun and leveling it at the outlaw leader. This is Deputy Marshal Tom McKenna. You're all under arrest for the murder of Henrik Morrison. The gang was caught completely off guard. Blackwood's hand moved toward his gun, but Tom was ready. Don't do it, Cyrus. At this range, there won't be enough left of you to bury. You son of a bitch, Blackwood snarled. You played us. That's right, and now you're going to pay. Jake Carver grabbed for his pistol. Tom swung the shotgun stock, catching him in the temple and dropping him from his horse. Another gang member reached for his gun, and Tom fired one barrel, the blast spinning the man from his saddle. Anyone else? Tom asked calmly. The Henderson family had emerged from their cabin, the father carrying a rifle. Mr. Henderson, I'm Deputy Marshal McKenna. These men came to kill your family. Help me get their guns. With Henderson's help, Tom disarmed and bound the surviving gang members. The wounded men would live to stand trial. The ride back to Deadwood Gulch was tense but uneventful. Deputy Foster was waiting at the jail with cells ready, genuinely impressed that Tom had captured the entire gang alive. Send a telegram to Marshal Stone. Tom instructed. Tell him to bring a judge. As Tom locked Blackwood in his cell, the outlaw glared with pure hatred. This isn't over, McKenna. Yes, it is, Tom replied quietly. 3 weeks later, the trial was held in Cedar Falls. Emma took the stand and testified with quiet dignity, identifying Blackwood and his men as her grandfather's killers. The Henderson family confirmed that Tom had saved their lives. The jury returned guilty verdicts in less than an hour. Blackwood and his surviving gang were sentenced to hang. On the morning of the execution, Tom stood with Emma on the courthouse steps. She had insisted on being there to see justice done for her grandfather. Is it really over? She asked as the trapdoor opened. It's over, Tom confirmed. They can't hurt anyone else. 6 months later, Emma McKenna stood in the kitchen of their new home, a comfortable cabin Tom had built in a beautiful valley, surrounded by aspen trees. At 15, she was growing tall and strong, with color in her cheeks and laughter in her voice. Dr. Margaret Whitmore had become a frequent visitor, and Emma had noticed the way she and Tom looked at each other. 3 months ago, Emma had finally asked Tom when he was going to propose to Margaret. What makes you think I want to marry Dr. Whitmore? Tom had asked. Because you smile differently when she's around, and because she makes you happy. Tom had laughed and taken Emma's advice. The wedding was planned for spring. Now, as they sat on their front porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Emma reflected on the promise Tom had made that first terrible night. Papa, she said, using the name that had come naturally after a few weeks. Do you remember what you promised me when you found me in the ashes? I promised you'd never be cold again. You kept that promise. Not just about being warm, but about having a family, having a home. Emma leaned against his shoulder. I want you to know that I'm not cold anymore. Not in any way that matters. Tom put his arm around her. That makes me happier than you'll ever know. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear. The girl who had once slept in cold ashes had become a young woman surrounded by warmth, the warmth of family, security, and unconditional love. "Papa," Emma said as they prepared to go inside, "Margaret told me she'd like to adopt me officially after you're married. Make it legal that we're family." Tom's throat tightened with emotion. "What do you think about that?" "I think Grandpa Henrik would approve. He always said the best families are the ones people choose to build together." As they walked into their warm, bright home, Tom marveled at how much their lives had changed. He had found Emma sleeping in the ashes of her destroyed world and promised she would never be cold again. In keeping that promise, he had discovered his own purpose and built a family that would last forever. The promise had been kept in every way that mattered. Emma would never be cold again, not in body, not in spirit, and most importantly, not in heart. She was surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally, and that love would keep her warm for the rest of her life. Some promises, Tom reflected as he banked a fire in their stone fireplace, were worth everything it took to keep them. And this promise, made in desperation to a broken child, had become the foundation of a life filled with love, justice, and hope. The ashes of tragedy had given birth to something beautiful, a family bound not by blood, but by choice, commitment, and the unbreakable promise that no matter what storms might come, they would face them together. And Emma McKenna would never be cold again. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cemetery as Emma McKenna Harrison placed fresh wildflowers on her grandfather's grave. At 35, she was now a respected teacher and mother of 3, her auburn hair touched with silver and her brown eyes still holding that same intelligent spark that had caught Tom's attention all those years ago. "Tell me about great-grandfather Henrik again, Mama," said her youngest daughter, 8-year-old Sarah, whose auburn curls matched her mother's. Emma smiled, adjusting the small wooden cross that marked Henrik Morrison's final resting place. Tom had kept his promise to return for the old man, giving him a proper burial in the Cedar Falls Cemetery with a headstone that read, "Henrik Morrison, beloved grandfather and frontier pioneer." "He was brave and kind," Emma said, her voice carrying across the quiet morning air. "He taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who choose to love you and stand by you no matter what." Behind them, Tom McKenna approached with slow but steady steps. At 62, his hair was completely silver now, and he walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but his eyes still held the same gentle strength that had comforted a broken child sleeping in cold ashes. "Papa Tom." Sarah ran to him, and he lifted her with a grunt of effort that made Emma smile. "How's my favorite granddaughter?" he asked, though Sarah was his only granddaughter. "I'm your only granddaughter, Papa Tom." Sarah giggled, the same response she gave every time. "Are you sure? I could have sworn there were dozens of you running around." Emma watched the familiar exchange with warm affection. Tom had officially adopted her after marrying Margaret, and when Emma married David Harrison, a kind schoolteacher from Denver, Tom had walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Now he was Papa Tom to her children, and they adored him as much as Emma did. "Where's Grandma Margaret?" Sarah asked. "She's at the clinic," Tom replied. "Mrs. Peterson's baby decided to arrive early this morning." Dr. Margaret McKenna, now 58, still ran her medical practice with the same dedication she'd shown 20 years ago. She and Tom had built a life filled with purpose, helping their community while raising Emma and watching her grow into the remarkable woman she'd become. "Mama," said Emma's eldest son, 15-year-old Henrik, walking up with his father David, "Dad says it's time to head back for Sunday dinner." Emma nodded, taking one last look at her grandfather's grave. "Thank you, Grandpa," she whispered, "for teaching me to be strong and for making sure I found Papa Tom." As the family walked back toward their carriages, Sarah skipped ahead while Henrik Morrison Harrison, named for his great-grandfather, helped his younger brother catch grasshoppers in the tall grass. "Emma," Tom said quietly, falling into step beside her, "do you ever regret how things turned out? Sometimes I wonder if I was selfish, taking you in like I did." Emma stopped walking and looked at him with surprise. "Papa, how can you even ask that? You saved my life. You gave me a family, an education, a future. You kept every promise you ever made to me. I just want to make sure you're happy, that you never felt trapped by an old man's promise." Emma smiled and took his weathered hand in hers. "Papa, remember what you told me that first night? That I'd never be cold again." Tom nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I haven't been cold a single day since then. Not because of the clothes you bought me or the houses you built, but because of the love you surrounded me with. You, Margaret, David, the children, we're all here because of that promise you made to a scared little girl." She gestured toward her family ahead of them, David helping the boys climb into the carriage, Sarah chattering excitedly about the flowers they'd seen. "Look at what grew from those ashes, Papa. 3 generations of love, dozens of students I've taught who went on to build their own families, a community where people take care of each other. That little girl sleeping in the cold ashes became part of something beautiful because you refused to ride away." Tom wiped his eyes, not caring who might see. "Your grandfather would be proud of the woman you became. I know he would, and I know he'd be grateful to you for keeping me safe until I was strong enough to build my own life." As they reached the carriages, Margaret appeared from the direction of town, her medical bag in hand and a satisfied smile on her face. "Another successful delivery?" Emma asked. "A healthy baby girl," Margaret confirmed, climbing into the carriage beside Tom. "The Petersons are over the moon." "That makes 4 babies you've delivered this month," Tom observed. "The frontier's growing up," Margaret said with satisfaction. "Families are putting down roots, building something lasting. It's exactly what we hoped for when we decided to stay." As the carriages rolled toward home, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them all together. A promise made in desperation had become the foundation for generations of love. The cold ashes of tragedy had nurtured something warm and eternal. Sarah fell asleep against her mother's shoulder, and Emma smoothed her daughter's auburn curls while watching the Colorado mountains rise majestically in the distance. Somewhere out there, other children might be facing their own darkness, their own cold ashes of despair. But Emma was living proof that even in the worst circumstances, hope could survive, love could triumph, and promises made with genuine hearts could change the world. The little girl who had once been so cold she thought she might die had become a woman who spent her life ensuring that no child in her community ever felt truly alone. And in keeping his promise to one orphan child, Tom McKenna had discovered that some vows, once made with love and honor, create warmth that spreads far beyond their original intent. As the sun set over the valley they all called home, Emma McKenna Harrison knew with absolute certainty that she would never be cold again, and neither would her children, or their children after them. Some promises, she reflected, echo through generations, warming hearts that haven't even been born yet. The legacy of that desperate vow made in the ashes would continue as long as there were people willing to choose love over indifference, family over loneliness, and hope over despair. And that, Emma thought as she kissed her sleeping daughter's forehead, was the most beautiful thing of all.